Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate a torn folded paperback cover effect inside of Photoshop. A member of my Nucly Academy recently asked that I do a tutorial on how to recreate this torn folded paperback cover effect inside of Photoshop, starting from creating the actual overlays. So what we're going to do is start from scratch, scan a book cover that already has scratches and tears, and then inside of Photoshop, recreate this effect on another book cover. Now, I'm sure you've seen book cover designs that incorporate elements of an actual book cover into it. An example is this cover here, where you have a kind of an old book spine incorporated into the design art, or this tear here. Now, there are paperback covers that actually do that with the cover art, where they incorporate folds or tears inside the design of the cover itself, meaning inside of the art. Now, in order to get a realistic effect, the best thing to do is start with an actual paperback that has folds or tears along these edges, like you can see here or here. Now, I just went and found a few paperbacks that I had lying around my house that does already have this effect. And what I'm going to do is scan this so I can bring it into Photoshop. Now, for scanning, pretty much any scanner will do the trick. The one I'm using is an HP Envy 4502. It's kind of a scanner printer. It's kind of my go-to machine that I have in my house. It does photo printing as well as document printing and scanning. I'll include a link to that in the description of this video. There may be better ones, to be fair. This is just the one I bought and I've been using for the last 5 or 10 years. Now, beyond that, when you do look for book covers to do this with, in addition to obviously having torn edges and folds, you're going to have an easier time turning it into an overlay if the book cover art is kind of on the dark side. You know, these will show up much better on a dark cover than they will on a light cover. So if you are looking to do this yourself and you want to find book covers that you can scan, I would look for book covers that have dark cover art. Now for this, we're going to be using this one here for our tutorial. If you do want to follow along, I have included the scan of it as well as the final overlay in a link in the description of this video. Go ahead, download that, and then let's dive into Photoshop. All right, I'm going to go to File, Open, and I've already scanned this book cover, and in the assets you'll find Paperback Cover 01. Let's go ahead and open that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this into an overlay that we can use on whatever other book cover we want to use it on. So first things first, I'm just going to cut this basic cut out here just so that I have a little bit of an easier element to work with. So I'm just going to do Command J. We can call this cover. And then underneath that, I'm just going to add some black. So we'll do a solid black layer. And then I'm going to kind of drag this to the middle and add in some rulers. So Command R to show my rulers. And then I'm going to pull in a guide. And I want this guide to basically be on this corner. So we'll have one there, kind of one here, and then I'm going to move my anchor point to this corner. So if I hold down Option, that'll allow me to place my anchor point. Whoops, I need to do, so I don't like having this show transform controls on. I'm going to turn that off. And then I'm going to do Command T for transform. I want to make sure I have my anchor point turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Hold down Option, which will allow me to place my anchor point. And then I'm going to place my anchor point here in this corner. And then I can look at these edges, and it looks like I need to go down here just a little. So I'm going to rotate this just to line up the top there. Now that I've done that, it seems like this has been skewed a bit. So if I just hold down Command, I can skew this to the right so that this lines up with the guide. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and drag a bottom guide and also a left side guide here. And let's look at this here. So that looks good there. And this maybe needs to go up just a tiny bit. Just like so. All right, so now we have everything basically lined up to our edges here. I'm going to hit OK. And a few other things here. I just updated my Photoshop, so it's got some default settings. I really don't like these blue hovers. If I'm on the move tool, I can go to this gear icon and just turn all these off. There you go. All right. Also, I don't need my guides anymore. I've already straightened this out, so let's do Command semicolon to turn those off. Next thing I'm going to do is I basically want to get rid of all the color and all the image information here and just save the broken edges and the folds of the original cover. So to do that, I'm going to use the black and white adjustments. So if we go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White, the beauty of this is I can black out all my colors. So I basically want to black out everything except for the white. Now white isn't a color, so it shouldn't be affected if I just black out all of these. Now there may be a hint of yellow in there, so we can always look at what happens if we drag the yellow up. Are we getting more or less information? And it looks like the yellows are primarily in the image, so we can keep that pretty low there. So we're basically blacking out everything except for the yellow. We're leaving a little bit of that information in there. Let's hit OK. All right, next thing we need to do is get rid of this kind of darker gray. We can do that with a curve. So let's go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. And you can kind of see this color of gray. If I hover here over, you can see that that's this big block in our histogram. So if I just move my dark point here to go beyond that, that's going to get rid of most of that information while keeping the rest of the information in our file. Because obviously I do want all these scratches to not disappear. So maybe move this up a little bit and then push this even further. So there you go. We're getting closer to having the overlay that we want. A few other things I can do before just straight up painting with black is use an overlay layer. So let's go ahead and call this overlay. What you call it really doesn't matter. What does matter is the blending mode we put it on. And in this case, I want to use overlay. And with overlay, what I can do is basically push any pixels that aren't white, make them darker. So in this case, everything here I want to be darker. I'm going to go onto my gradient tool, put this on classic gradient, and I want this on foreground to transparent, which is the middle one under basics. And then with black as my color, I'm just going to start a gradient a little bit left of the edge and then go toward the edge. So something like this. And let's do it down here as well. And along here at the top. All right, I'm going to do that one more time. I can actually just copy this layer with Command J, and that should push the rest of that all the way to black. Give us a nice edge there. I may even do one more gradient along this edge to get this closer to that edge there. And with this layer still selected, I'm going to go on to my brush tool, which is B on my keyboard. And with my brush tool, I'm going to right mouse click, go to general brushes here, and just select a soft round brush like this. And with black as my color, I'm going to paint over these areas here where we kind of see the image still. So just like this, I do want to leave these. So anywhere where there's like scratches, I want to make sure I'm not painting over those areas. I can adjust my brush size to make sure there. So that's looking really good. And then the last thing I need to do is just paint with black in these areas that are still should be black but aren't. So here we'll just call this a blackout layer. And just still I have my black brush. I'm just going to continue painting, but because this layer is not on overlay, the white will not show through. It will be covered up with my black. I'm going to make sure the edge of my brush is a bit sharper here so that I'm not accidentally putting any black in those areas. We'll get rid of this button as well. All right, that's looking really good. The last thing I'm going to do is make one more layer, and we'll just call this fix-ups. And here what I'm going to do is I need to, anywhere where these, so here is where the button was, this break here should really go to the edge. So should this one. So let's go to our clone stamp tool. Here I want to make sure that it's sampling current and below. And I want to put the blending mode of this on screen. And then if I hold down Option, that determines which area I'm going to be copying. So maybe up here, and then down here we can make our brush a little bit bigger and just paint our way down until this reaches that edge there. I'm also going to put this layer on screen just to make sure we're not covering up any of our existing scratches there. And just like that, and then we'll do this one down here as well. And that looks good. All right, so now we have our overlay. Let's go ahead and make a new layer, and we're going to call this overlay. And here, maybe I'll just crop first. So I basically want to crop everything that's just black. So if we go to Image, Trim, we can actually do that by picking our trim based on our top left pixel, which is black. If we hit OK, this should kind of cut everything in closer to that pixel. Now this is also telling me that I have some non-black pixels in here somewhere. I don't really want that. So I'm going to go to my blackout layer and just go to my gradient and maybe make a black gradient right about here, going to the right. So everything left of that will be black. And then I can do my trim one more time. There you go. And I might just want to do that on the right side here as well. And there you go. All right, so now I have this trimmed and nicely compact there. I'm going to go back to my top overlay layer and then just do Shift Option Command E. That'll merge everything onto one layer, which will make our next step a little bit easier. So let's go to File, Open. And now what I'm going to do is grab my book cover, and I'm just going to grab this book cover sample here. This is a book cover I did for a friend of mine who wrote a book and released it on Amazon. And I'm going to make 2 copies of this. So let's go ahead and do Command J and then Command J again. So we have 2 copies here in our layers. And the top copy I'm going to call Sharpness. And the copy below that I'm going to call Halftone. Let's go ahead and temporarily hide our sharpness layer. And on our halftone layer, I'm going to go to Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone. We're going to set this to 4, leave everything else on default, and hit OK. And you can see that's created this halftone effect like this was printed. Now this is too strong, so I'm just going to set the opacity on this to 30%. Now you can also just hit 3 on your keyboard with your layer selected. That will also set the opacity of that layer to 30%. So I like the look of that. The only problem is now that we've done this, everything looks a little blurry compared to our original, which is nice and sharp. So I want to bring that sharpness back, but still keep this halftone effect. So let's select our sharpness layer, turn that back on. I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And here, let's set this to 2 pixels and hit OK. And you can see what that's done is it's basically taken everything and made it 50% gray, unless it's close to an edge, in which case it is made it either lighter or darker. And what this gives us is a layer that we can use to create sharpness. And the way we're going to do that is using the blending mode called linear light. So with linear light selected, and if I turn this on and off, you can see that that's creating that nice sharpness that we want. Now if this is too strong, we can take our fill and maybe set this down to 70%. Now this is one of these layers where the fill adjusts the intensity of the effect, and opacity controls just the opacity of the effect as if it were a different layer. So for this blending mode, if you're using linear light, you want to adjust the fill, not the opacity. All right, let's do Command 0. So this looks good compared to our original here. I'll just Option click on our original so you can see the difference. It looks more like a printed cover. Next thing I'm going to do is bring in our overlay. So we can just take this layer and drag it on top here. Now the first blending mode that we're going to try here is screen, and that'll basically just show you what this will look like. So I'm going to do Command T for transform and just make this the size of our book cover like so. And for a simple implementation of this effect, this looks really good. However, I want to show you another blending mode that you can use here that'll give you a, in my opinion, better looking effect, and that is exclusion. So let's go down here to exclusion, and if we just Command Z to undo and then redo, which is Shift Command Z, you can see the difference. So with exclusion, we're actually getting, rather than this white color, we're getting more of a yellow paper color. And also where it's going over light areas, it's making the scratches darker. So again, that just looks more realistic and looks more like you're seeing the paper through the other side. Now it does cause one issue, which is here, these letters should not be printed in these areas. So we're going to do a little trick here to fix that, and that is we're going to hold down Option, click on the eyeball so we just have this layer selected, go to our channels, Command click on RGB, so we're selecting just the white areas of this layer. Hold down Option, click on the eyeball again, and then we'll call this layer Fix-Ups. And here I'm going to go back to my clone stamp tool, which is S on your keyboard. I'm going to take this off screen. I want it on normal. Make sure it's on current and below. Hold down Option, select this paper color, and just use that to kind of cover up this part that should not be in the paper here. So there, and then here as well. And then the last thing we can do here is go on to our normal brush tool, hold down Option, select this kind of paper color here. Now you'll notice that as I'm moving it, my color picker is changing colors quite dramatically. I don't want that. So let's go to our eyedropper, which is somewhere here. If we hit I on our keyboard, we should get it. So right now it's picking a point sample. I want it to be a 5x5 average. So it's going to average the 5 closest pixels rather than picking just the 1 pixel that's below my eyedropper. So that's giving me a better paper color there. And anywhere where I want this to not be blue here, for example, I'm going to just paint over with this brush, and that's going to give me my paper color through there. So just there, maybe here. And then I'm going to do Command D to deselect, or click the deselect here. And there you go. Now we have that effect nicely on there. The last thing I might want to do here is just add a few more spots of grunge or breaking up, like dirt splatters or little scratches to the book cover. I want to show you another blending mode that you can use here. So let's go to File, Place Embedded, and within our assets we have this dirt film dust. Let's go ahead and place that. I'm going to hold down Option and just make this quite a lot bigger. Just make it the size of our cover here. And I want to make this gray white. So a quick way to do that is go to Image, Adjustments, Curves, select our white picker right here, and just go to this gray and click on it. That'll make it all white. And then we're going to put this on Divide. And Divide, you can see, is creating these blotches in the printing, and it's also really pumping up the saturation, which really makes these look like printing mistakes, and just kind of helps create that overall effect that this is a paperback book cover. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that torn paperback cover effect inside of Photoshop from start to finish. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, leave a comment. I do read all of them. And also, if you want to have the opportunity to directly ask for tutorials or join our live Q&As where you can ask me questions and I do demonstrations inside of Photoshop Live, you can join my Nucly Academy. I will include a link to that in the description of this video. It is an exclusive Photoshop community where you get all access to all my professional training, all my professional Photoshop tools, as well as get to join our exclusive community where you can post your work, get critiques, and join our twice a month live Zoom calls where I do a demonstration inside of Photoshop, and you can ask all the questions you have about Photoshop, about design, and about creating various pieces of art, graphic designs, and so forth. So check that out if you are interested. And otherwise, here's some other tutorials that you can check out. I will see you next time.